Good morning. Today I explain light chapter 2. Chapter 2 talk about light. Light is transverse wave. Transverse wave. Electromagnetic waves travel at constant speed in space. This speed c equal 3 times 10 of power 8 meter per second. This is the largest speed in the world. Okay. Why the electromagnetic waves can travel in space? Because electromagnetic waves consist of electric field and magnetic field perpendicular to each other and perpendicular to the direction of propagation. Light propagates in straight line, but it has many proports. What are the proports of light waves? Number 1, light reflection. Light reflection, it is bouncing or returning back of light when it fall on reflecting surface. Returning back of light when fall on reflecting surface. Light reflection has two laws of reflection. Number 1, between the incident ray and the normal line, incident ray of light and the normal line, this is angle of incidence equal phi, and the angle between reflected ray and the normal line is theta, or angle of reflection. Law number 1, angle of incidence equal angle of reflection, phi equal theta. This is very important law. The second law say incident ray and refracted ray and normal line, three lines dole at normal line at the point of incidence, okay? All 3 lines dole all in one plane. This plane perpendicular to the reflecting surface. This is reflecting surface, okay? And this plane is perpendicular to reflecting surface. The second property, light refraction. Light refractions occurs when the light passes through two different media. For example, incident light ray comes from air and enter the glass. Change the medium from air to glass. So the light ray change its direction. Light fall on the glass is called incident ray, and the ray change its direction is called refracted ray. Okay, so the light refraction is a change in light direction when it passes a separating surface between two transparent media having different optical density. Air has certain density and glass has another density due to change its velocity from medium to another medium. Velocity change and the wavelength change, as I explained in chapter 1. Okay? When the light ray change its media, the velocity and wavelength changed, but the frequency is still constant. Okay? Between the incident ray and the normal line at the point of incidence, this is phi, angle of incidence, phi. And between the normal line and the refracted ray, this is theta. Don't equal phi, don't equal theta, okay? But the incident ray, the first law of refraction, incident ray and refracted ray and the normal line at point of incident, all on one plane, perpendicular to the separating surface or refracting surface. Okay, this is the first law, incident ray, refracted ray and the normal line at the point of incidence all lie on one plane perpendicular to the refracting or separating surface. Okay. The second law, relative refractive index N12 equal sine phi over sine theta, or equal V1 over V2, or lambda 1 over lambda 2, or N2 over N1. What is this? Relative refractive index N12. What's meant by relative refractive index? This is a ratio between absolute refractive index in second medium to absolute refractive index of first medium. What is the meaning of absolute refractive index also? Okay. Absolute refractive index, this is and refractive index especially to each medium, on to each medium, equal C over N. So the absolute refractive index, this is the ratio. Ratio between what? Ratio between speed of light in space اللي هي constant و equal 3 times 10 of power 8. احنا عارفين كده. And the velocity of light in the medium. When calculate the speed of light in space divide the speed of light in the medium, when calculate this ratio, equal number, this is number is absolute refractive index for this medium. يعني يا ولاد الميديم اللي انا باخد الفلوسيتي اوف لايت ان ات هو ده الميديم اللي انا بحسب عنده او بحسب له الريفراكتيف اندكس. يبقى الابسوليوت ريفراكتيف اندكس دي لايك النيم اوف ايتش بيرسون، كل بيرسون فينا ليه نيم اتس اون. اماني اتس اون نيم. اوكي، ماي نيم اماني. each medium has absolute refractive index calculated by this ratio. Okay, absolute refractive index is more than 1. In general, is more than 1 because C more than V. Sorry, V. C, speed of light in space, 3 times 10 of power 8. This is the largest speed in the world. So any another velocity of light in other medium less than this is number. So C more than V, number more than divide number more divide number less. So the absolute refractive index always is always more than 1 because C more than V, or speed of light in space more than speed of light in any medium. But the absolute refractive index of air is approximately equal to 1 because equal to 1 speed of refractive index, absolute refractive index for air approximately equal 1 because the speed of light in space nearly equal to speed of light in air. يعني C equal V. So N equal C over V. C over V, 1, 2 numbers equal, يبقى N equal 1. This is in air. We must know absolute refractive index in air equal 1. But the absolute refractive index in each medium calculated by C over V. C speed of light in space and V speed of light in this medium. Okay? So when calculate absolute refractive index for 2 medium traveled through it the light, so the relative refractive index N1 2 equal N2 over N1. N2 absolute refractive index in medium, and N1 another absolute refractive index for first medium. I mean when light travel from air to glass يبقى absolute refractive index for glass N2 divide the absolute refractive index of air N1 اللي هو approximately equal 1 give the relative refractive index. Okay, N2 over N1 equal N1 2 relative refractive index. And relative refractive index also ratio between sine angle of incident sine phi over sine angle of refraction sine theta. Ratio between sine of angle of incidence in the first medium to sine of angle of refraction in the second medium. This is phi and this is theta. Phi between the incident ray and normal line, theta between refracted ray and normal line. Angle phi over angle theta. But N1, 2 or relative refractive index can be defined by ratio between sine phi over sine theta. Okay? Or V1 over V2. V1 over V2, I explained that in the previous chapter. When ray change its media or its medium, travel from first medium to second medium, its velocity change. Okay? So V1 over V2. V1 velocity of the ray in the first medium in air, and V2 velocity of the air of the light in glass. Velocity of light in air to velocity of light in glass. And velocity of light in air more than the velocity of light in glass, because the air is gas and the molecules of the gas far from each other. So the light travel more by more speed. But in glass solid, and the molecules of solid closed from each other, so the ray travels more slowly. So V1 more than V2. V1 more than V2. V1 over V2, relative refractive index. And the velocity is directly proportional مع الwavelength. Okay, lambda 1 over lambda 2 at constant frequency. لان الفريكونسي هنا لما الري يا شباب بيعمل تشينج للميديم بتاعه، الفريكونسي بيفضل كونستانت. مين اللي بيتغير مع الفيلوسيتي؟ الويفلنس. يبقى برضو الويفلنس 1 more than الويفلنس 2. الويفلنس 1 هيبقى more than الويفلنس 2. يعني لو الري هنا ماشي كده بويفلنس كبيره، هنا هيبقى ماشي by small wavelengths. هنا large wavelengths. Okay, at velocity large, wavelength large, velocity small, wavelength small. Okay, directly proportional V and lambda at constant frequency. Okay, at the last Snell's law. Snell's law ما جابش لو جديد خالص يا شباب. مش احنا قلنا ان N12 equal ratio between N2 over N1 absolute refractive index for second medium to first medium, وبرضه هو equal sin phi over sin theta. Okay, make cross multiplication. يبقى N1 sin phi equal N2 sin theta. N1 sin phi equal N2 sin theta. This is Snell's law, very important law. Snell's law, absolute refractive index for medium of incidence times sine of angles of incidence is equal to absolute refractive index of the medium of refraction times the sine of angles of refraction. Okay, and the absolute refractive index N2 over N1 also N2 over N1. كده Snell's law خلاص finished. بس the last information N2 over N1 equal A equal lambda 1 over lambda 2. So the wavelength is directly proportional to the velocity and inversely proportional to the 1 1 2. يبقى inversely proportional to absolute refractive index. Okay, thanks and goodbye.